All right, well, let's go ahead and get started now. Sorry for the slight technical issues to start this morning, but I think we're going to move along. And it looks like most everybody has now gotten on. We have our normal crew. Welcome to the January 1st of 2023 Episode Quality Improvement Program subgroup. We have very interesting updates for you today. And a couple big updates I'm going to start with, and I'm going to let Melanie talk a little bit about a grant opportunity that has been just reopened as well. But let me start with what is, I guess, quasi good news, not perfect news. For those of you who haven't heard, as part of the resolution of the federal issues, the advanced payment model status, while it was not extended at 5%, it was extended at a lower amount. So that's good news, obviously, for EQIP, which means that we will get some type of advanced payment model bonus as we move forward with the EQIP program. So that's positive news. And what I'll do is maybe I'll look for a good summary from CMS or another source that we can send out on the email listserv to everybody on that. The second bit of new and exciting news, and I don't know if we'll talk about this more later on, is the HSCRC decided and has appointed Commissioner Dr. James Elliott to chair a physician alignment work group. That committee has got dates and a schedule and a plan. That committee is going to try to figure out how to create more programs like MDPCP and EQIP to align physicians with the total cost of care contract. That activity is going to be really important. So I would encourage anybody on this call or anybody who's interested to think of ways that as we redefine the total cost of care contract and the new relationships that we've started to develop through the Maryland Primary Care Program and the Episode Quality Improvement Program, what is the third leg? What is the next thing we do to better align physicians with the model and the contract? And if you have ideas or suggestions or things we should look at, that is the place to do it. And I'd love to hear from anybody who thinks, you know, we should rate set pediatricians or we should do X, Y, or Z. I think no idea is too small. We really want to hear what you think and go through it and go from there. So what I'll do now is I'll turn it over to Melanie, who I think is going to make a pretty exciting announcement this morning. Melanie Cavalier from the Maryland Healthcare Commission, you're on, I think, right?
Yes. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yep.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Jean. So as Jean mentioned, I'm Melanie Cavalier. I'm the Chief of Innovative Care Delivery at the Maryland Healthcare Commission. So we're very excited to let everyone know that we have decided to basically extend our practice transformation grant with MedChi and allow for kind of an ongoing enrollment to let practices enroll as they're ready. We're doing this grant supports practice transformation, and it's open to any kind of specialties. So right now we have about a 50-50 mix of PCPs and specialist physicians, but it's really all over the board about who's enrolled. So we have everybody from optometrists, we have pediatricians. So, you know, we're happy to work with any practice that would like to work with us. And what it does is it helps them to prepare to be successful in programs similar to MDPCP, EQIP, and these other programs like Jean is talking about. It is based on a program that was created by CMS that had 120 physicians nationwide. So the materials have a long history, and we're excited to talk to anybody who's interested. So thank you for the time this morning, Jean.
And maybe, Melanie, we can get a one pager or something and we can email that out to everybody on the list too. And again, you know, I don't remember exactly how many practices were turned down by MDPCP, but I know we just got that list. And it's a great opportunity for them to kind of tweak the things that didn't work out and reapply. And we did also have a handful of practices that did not make the cut for EQIP for various reasons. It wasn't as many as the first time, I don't think. Some of them were because the codes just didn't fit or it didn't make sense, but some of them were because of things like attribution, which actually is something that they can work on through this process. So it's a really good opportunity for them to kind of look and figure out how can they get into these types of programs and what do they need to do. And for the smaller private practices, it could be incredibly helpful dealing with some of the things that maybe they're just not quite ready for. So I'm really, everybody at MedChi is very appreciative of you extending the grant, the work you're doing, Melanie, and thanks for the extra slots.
Yeah, we've gotten great feedback from the practices, and the practice transformation team at MedChi has been doing an amazing job. So thank you, Jean, and thank you again for the time this morning.
Okay. All right. So having done the warm up for you, Jessica, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it away.
Thanks, guys. So we don't have a crazy agenda today, but we did want to talk about sort of the final enrollment status and everything, since that was really the focus at the end of last year, as well as timeline, both for the first performance year and now as we enter the second performance year, and finally close out about where we are with some of the episodes that we are looking to add next year. Okay. So administrative and enrollment updates. So you guys have seen this slide. We finally are off the slide. So this is everything we accomplished at the end half of last year, really focusing on the enrollment and contracting. We do welcome feedback from you all as participants about how well it went or how well it didn't go. I will say from our side, we thought that it did go relatively smooth. However, again, given that the deadline for contracting was December 31st, as expected, we did receive probably about half of our total contracts within those last couple days. I do want to thank our wonderful CRP hospital who did an excellent job at sort of getting through that backlog as quickly as possible. And additionally, once we were able to get through that, we did want to give all of the entities an opportunity to ensure that no contracts were missed, since this is a basically entirely manual process. And with all that, we really didn't finalize this list of care partners into January. And I think with that, our reflection is that perhaps there is opportunity in this upcoming year to look at ways to optimize that timing, that deadline, so we aren't bumped up against the PTO that's expected around the December holidays. So we of course will communicate that if that changes. We do not want to shorten any time for contracting, but looking at possibly maybe shifting it up. So again, we're not bumping up against the holidays and things like that.
You earlier, God damn it.
So where we ended. So we have 62 total entities that are participating in PY2 with a total of 2,787 care partners. That is up by over 800 from last year. So we are very happy with that growth and want to continue seeing that year over year. There are 43 different specialties that are represented, and there were 45 different EQIP episodes available for entities. And we're happy that there are participation in each one of them. I mean, you can see one of the big things here, which is always interesting in approach, is just the range. So we have the entity that is just one singular provider, and then we have a large entity that is nearly 1,000 care partners. So quite a different range, and obviously a different probably approach in how they are participating in the program. And then from a sense, we do have entities that are primarily like multi-specialty. You can see that over half of the entities are participating in more than 2 episodes. So they're not necessarily singly focused on one, but a good chunk also are just kind of focusing on one path. And then here on the right, you can see just the spread, a good representation and participation across all the different specialties. And again, we know that not each episode perfectly fits into some of these categories, and it's not a great representation of the true specialties of the care partners. But again, just for your all's information, you can kind of see the spread of where the participation falls within EQIP.
Why is the urology number so much lower than the others?
Well, so this is all care partners. So I get a sense that this large entity, which is 1,000, if they're participating in one of them, that's why you're going to see these episodes.
Oh, and then their
numbers are really high. Yeah, so that one large entity is not participating in urology.
Okay.
So that's that's just a little bit of because it is an all-in-one participation. So there you go.
Oh. Yep.
And okay, so next steps, as we mentioned, we did sort of finalize that list of care partners just within the last week or so. And what you all will be receiving in the upcoming week, or perhaps the week after, is this final eligibility and audit. So what we do is based off the final composite of the care partners within your entity, we do another run to ensure that the volume thresholds are met. There are examples where some people either didn't sign a contract, they left the organization, and due to that composite of your list, entities could fall below that threshold. So you would be disenrolled for that specific episode and continue to participate in the other episodes that you are still eligible for. We also do a claim threshold analysis. Again, we did this earlier on based off the initial enrollment group, but doing it again off the final list. And this is that 75% threshold that we have for the care partners, for your care partners to touch at least one claim in that baseline period. So we ensure that that's not only met, but those that have not touched a claim, we let you all know that technically that provider is on a probationary status. And what that means is just, in order for them to participate in the next performance year 3, they will need to touch, again, any claim within this current performance year to be eligible for the following one. And finally, this quality metrics, we rerun these numbers and let you all know if for some reason you do fall behind or are not meeting the minimal quality performance baseline and you're placed on probation. A reminder that 2 consecutive performance years on probation does result in the removal of that entity from EQIP. So these are really all FYIs. There's no next step for you guys to do, but it's to ensure that you guys are aware of, based off of final status and final participation, where everyone lands within the program. If you don't hear from us, that's good news. So just letting you all know. Okay, and timeline. So really we're focused obviously on calendar year 2023. As I mentioned, we sort of finalized enrollment in January, and performance year 2 did start January 1st. I do want to note this February 24th date. So the next release of data is incorporating both performance year 1 and performance year 2. So we expect a quarterly update for all performance data, but we also are now incorporating the preliminary target prices and your baseline data for our new performance year. Typically this would be released in January, but again, given the fact that it took us some time to ensure that we did have the right composite and accurate representation of all of the providers that are participating, this did get pushed a little bit. And then you'll see kind of quarterly in April, in July, and October, there's going to be the additional updates for each of the performance years and et cetera. Again, we always have an asterisk, and we will communicate if for some reason those dates do change. We want to ensure that the quality of the data is accurate. That is our top priority before pushing anything out. And then it seems crazy, but July is when performance year 3 enrollment does open. So we'll talk next a lot about sort of what we're doing between now and July to prepare for that and to finalize what the episodes we will be recruiting for sort of within the spring timeframe. Additionally, with the final Q4 data available for performance year 1 in July, you'll notice that probably August, September is when you'll start seeing incentive payments being distributed for those entities that did earning for performance year. So that's sort of the timeline for the rest of this year. And of course, you can reach out if there's any questions or concerns. So always wanting to let you guys know where resources are. The CRISP learning system does have sort of training and policy guides up there for you guys to see. And then we are always available, of course, in the HSCRC to meet one-on-one if there are questions with any organizations. And always please point to that equip@crisphealth.org email and we'll get you to the right place. So we'll let you talk a little bit about this update for the team.
Thanks, Jessica. So doing a quick update here on the target prices. As you all know, we update the target prices as CMS releases their different fee schedule updates. So if the physician fee schedule increases by 2.5%, we increase all the physician claims from the baseline by 2.5% to set the target prices. That process relies on sort of accurate CMS inflation factors. And for the most part, they're very accurate for an obvious reason. Those are the factors that CMS uses to change the payments themselves. We have noticed, however, that SNF payments came in higher than expected. And we think that the reason is, or we're pretty sure the reason is, that when CMS moved to the new SNF payment system, there was an adjustment factor that was put into that new payment system to make it budget neutral. So essentially, there's an alternative payment for SNFs that started on October 1st of 2019. But that wasn't expected to result in a net increase or a net decrease in payments. And so, they construct the update factor and then they adjust it so that it would be budget neutral. CMS, we think, just sort of missed a little bit by about 2.5%. So the SNF payments are higher than expected, and then that were expected in the update factors. So we are going to do an adjustment to those SNF prices to bring them back in line with actual inflation as CMS was paying those claims. So we're doing that this announcement now just to let people know that those target prices are going to change a little bit once we do our final data update and have adjusted for that excess SNF inflation, or that unexpected SNF inflation. In general, this will favor all EQIP participants because it'll be raising the target price to reflect that extra SNF inflation that was unexpected both by us and CMS. And you should see that in the final update for this year. That'll be coming around March or April. And that's it, Jessica.
So that's sort of all of our administrative updates, and we're going to move into performance year 3 episode development. So again, from a timing standpoint, we are sort of in this winter phase where we are sort of looking at the design of new episodes before we go into recruitment, and then obviously finalization leading into July enrollment. Here is sort of what we're looking at. The Prometheus episodes are the easiest ones, obviously, to add since they already are predefined. I believe that the decision will be a little bit based off of interest and just in general sense of, where our stakeholders fall. But for this new episode development, which we're kind of going to dive into each one of these individually, we are very happy that we've had very engaged partners that are looking to kind of spearhead and lead the development of these, and it is quite cumbersome to come up with all these specs, and we appreciate their clinical expertise that they are lending us, and we want to kind of share where we are now. I think all of these are definitely in development. Continue to have conversations with these stakeholders, and it's mainly just for us to kind of share and to ensure that you are aware of the direction where these are heading. So with that, I'll dive into the chronic kidney disease episode. Again, it's no surprise that kidney patients are high need and their care is complex and fragmented. They can be in and out of hospitals, struggling from a balancing family, community care, etc. And these patients can feel overwhelmed, confused, exhausted sort of by the process. And there is a belief that there could be significant savings opportunities during the transition into dialysis for these patients. And that's sort of where the focus and the design behind this episode was intended to do. So with all of our EQIP episodes, obviously this is Maryland Medicare fee-for-service bennies. We're proposing that it triggers based off of a diagnosis of stage 4 kidney disease, and it would end or last until 90 days after that benny progresses into end-stage renal disease. So that's sort of the parameters. Now, additional specifications here is slightly different than some of the episodes that we've had that we currently have, since likely would not have a fixed episode length. It's variable based off of that beneficiary. So we're working through what that would look like from an alternative target pricing methodology. It could potentially be panel-based target pricing or per benny per month target pricing. I think that's sort of what we're working on and trying to figure out what makes the most sense and what's feasible to actually operationalize in the upcoming year. And then other points of discussion is really these exclusion factors. With any of these episodes, we want to define them to ensure that only the relevant costs are going to be included. So we're probably going to come up with a list of that, which of course we would share as well. But that's sort of the state that we're working on with this currently. Are there any questions about kidney disease episode? Okay. So I'll move on
Just
to our
quickly
muscular-
on the kidney disease, though, I did want to thank Dr. Adam Weinstein, who'd been working with us and putting a lot of effort and time into that. And one of the things I wanted to point out is that any of the physicians who have ideas, or anyone who has ideas, Will and Jessica and I are happy to get you the information you need or help you or work with it. And without his help, I don't think we'd be as far along on that one as we are.
Totally agree. And kind of similar for our musculoskeletal episode, Dr. Grunner has been wonderful at leading this and kind of pushing this along and defining this episode. So, so this one is looking at obviously a comprehensive value-based MSK episode model, incentivizing or kind of structuring around the idea that early and adherent physical therapy would improve outcome and decrease total cost of that care. Also looking at impact factors such as lowering ED admissions, lowering unnecessary imaging, opioid use, and ultimately also lowering unnecessary surgeries as well. So the definition that we've had thus far, again, looking at Maryland Medicare fee-for-service bennies, this would be triggered at the point of initial PT evaluation with an MSK diagnosis. You can see the codes here that we've decided on, as well as a list of some of the exclusion costs that we're working on to define, but these are the general categories that would likely be excluded. Additional discussions really is looking at episode length. Should this be a year? Should it be 6 months? And we'll do some analysis once we can define the episode slightly more to look at, where the cost falls over time to make an educated decision about that based off of the data. And then also looking at provider attribution. Currently based off of the triggers, likely therapists would be the attributed provider for this. So ensuring that that's the right model. We can also encourage that, this is a comprehensive episode. So while it may be assigned to therapists, we want to ensure that we have the engagement and participation of our specialists, our surgeons, et cetera, those all that play a part in this episode. So that's sort of where we are. I think we're very happy and actually excited about the points where we are at this episode. The more defined it is, I think the better we can ensure that it is being created, as clear as possible for the upcoming year. So
Do we want to give Dr. Gunner a chance to
I was
chat?
gonna say, I think he's on. So
Yeah.
so Dr. Gunner, feel free to correct me and, share anything else that you would like to add.
No, I'm very excited to be working on this comprehensive MSK alternative payment model, and look forward to continuing to work with you guys on it. So thanks for having me with this.
One of the other things too, when we were earlier on, we were doing EQUIP, and I can't remember how long it was, but I sent letters out to all the national specialties, and I've as recently as 3 months ago, I did a presentation for a large group of national specialties and state medical societies for the AMA on this. If they're working on something or they've submitted something to PTAC that they want us to look at, Will and Jessica and I have been very good about meeting with anybody who has an idea about physician alignment or a new advanced payment model. Now, look, sometimes things don't work or they don't translate well. It obviously has to align with the model, but if you are aware of someone who's working on something and wants to have a talk with us, we're happy to do it. If we don't hear about it, it's we can't do anything with it. So please, any good ideas, we're happy to try to see if we can't make them fit.
Great. And Will, do you want to talk about behavioral health?
Sure. So we're also working on one final episode potentially for 2024 in addition to the extra Prometheus episodes. This would be for behavioral health medical home. It would include Maryland beneficiaries who have a severe mental illness, a diagnosis of a severe mental illness within the past 2 years. That includes bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, and others. These patients would be attributed to psychiatrists and therapists. So a behavioral health medical home that includes both of those provider types. We would be attributing patients to those providers if they'd been seen by at least one provider within the last year. And then they're attributed to the behavioral health home of the provider that saw them. There is a little bit of a complicated attribution algorithm, given that this is one of our chronic episode types and not one of our procedural episode types. So we have to ensure that if the beneficiary is seen by multiple behavioral health providers, that they get assigned to the one that does the plurality of their care and so is most responsible for them. And then that patient would be attributed to the behavioral health home for the duration of the following year. So one of our chronic panel-based models. So if you're interested in any of these 3 episodes and hearing more or have other ideas, please reach out to us, and happy to chat with you. We're also happy to answer any questions now.
So we had a relatively short agenda updates for today. So that is all that we prepared. We are moving these to every other month. So our next meeting would be in March. And yeah, obviously feel free to reach out in between. If there's any other questions, let us know. That's it. Short
I do think we have a couple of hands here. So Anina.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the presentation. Just a quick question, Jessica, on the audits that you mentioned. Do we know when we'll hear if, either way, or I guess if we don't hear, it's good, but is there sort of a timeline that you're expecting we would hear by?
We anticipate in the next week. So
Okay.
Possibly early the following week, but like I said, kind of just finalized this week. So we need to run that, but yeah, within the next week or so. It wouldn't be long.
Thank you.
Oh, I see Dr. Modermast.
Yes, good morning. I had 2 questions. One is for the skilled nursing facility increase in pricing. Could we just increase our number by 2.5% to see where we are? Is that a safe assumption to make? That's my first.
No, it is not a safe assumption to make. So you could increase all of the SNF payments in your episodes by that amount, but not the overall episode total. And then for individual EQIP providers, the magnitude by which their target price shifts depends on, the proportion of SNF claims in their baseline period. So it's really only the SNF costs that are inflating. So don't just inflate the episode total. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. We're just thinking about, is there potential episodes we want to remove ourselves from because it looks so out of whack from last year? And so is there a deadline for us to remove ourselves from episodes? Because I think you said March would be when we'd have the information, and I'm not sure that you all are willing to wait until March.
Right. So if you have a question about an episode that looks aberrant, I would suggest you reach out to us and we can have a discussion about that before and discuss the timeline. We really try to have the episodes set by the start of the year. We could make an exception in unusual cases, but so please reach out to us if you see something weird. Could be something in the data that we need to look into and fix. And if there's something really unexpected and you guys really want to drop, we can have that discussion with you.
All right, thanks. We'll follow up on that. My second question is, would COCM programs for behavioral health fall into the work that you're considering? So if we have integrated COCM programs within primary care and specialty care, would that fall into the behavioral health episode that you're thinking?
Yeah, it's a good question. It depends on how the services are provided. So we would trigger these episodes based on a therapist or psychiatrist treating one of the patients with one of those diagnoses. So if in the primary care medical home, there are behavioral health providers that are providing services and billing Medicare for those services, then yes, they could be included. If they're not billing Medicare or they're part of another practice or something like that, and they're not really part of the primary care medical home, then we would need to do something a little bit different than the model we're currently working on. And so it really requires that the psychiatrist or the therapist bill Medicare for providing a service to a patient with one of the serious mental illnesses. If that happens, then they would be the patients would be attributed to them. If it doesn't happen, and I know there's a lot of really good and important clinical work that happens that might not be provided either by one of those two provider types or might not be billed to Medicare. So that's not to say that work is not important as part of the PCMH, but we would need to take a different approach to getting the patients attributed to those practices.
Maybe
Yes.
we could share the CPT codes that are triggering for that so that they could do some work and find out which practitioners would be included, and they can see, and then we can see if we have to do more work. Does that make sense, Will?
Sure. Yeah. Why don't I suggest that we follow up with you after this meeting? If you could just send us an email and we can schedule a meeting and talk through how the attribution would work and what providers would be included, et cetera.
And let me also say this: on all three of the episodes that we're kind of working on, the behavioral health, the nephrology, and the Dr. Gunner's episode, once we have them somewhat more finalized, Will and Jessica and I will do probably very specific educational things targeted at the specialties or areas that would be affected, as we've done in the past with the others.
That would be great. I just 2 points very quickly. With COCM, the billing is from the medical side, so it comes from the physician, not from the psychiatrist himself, even though psychiatrist is part of the team. And the second piece I just want to elevate is that primary care does 60% of treatment for psychiatric illnesses. So maybe you're trying to carve out very, very specific severe cases, but I just want to remind people that it's not just psychiatrists that treat mental illness.
Yep. And again, I think we fully recognize that, and I think primary care does a lot of very good and very important work in treating patients with serious mental illness, and we may need in the future to develop episodes that are more targeted to capture that relationship, as well as the relationship between a psychiatrist or a therapist who is billing Medicare.
And I'd also say that we're not opposed to working on another model if when we look through those specific codes for this particular model, if we're not capturing the psychiatry or psychiatric related work, behavioral health work that's being done by primary care, then maybe we can look at the codes related to that and find another way to do a model that would make sense and get those. And believe me, I would agree with you on the primary care piece. And that became very apparent with all the Optum payment problems. You'd be amazed how many primary care doctors complain to MedChi about Optum for the behavioral health non-payment issues that we've been dealing with in the state as a result of that Optum debacle. It really became very apparent how much primary care, how much psychiatry primary care was actually doing. So I think that's a really good point. Anyway, any other questions? Wow, that was a lot in a short meeting. All right, good job, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.